Hello everybody and welcome to the Marly Bird YouTube channel. I'm here just a little bit early for the annual Turkey Trot Make-Along event to get you started on your gauge swatch for the Shoop Knit Cardigan or the Breckenridge Knit Cardigan. So what you need to do is gather your materials, the yarn you plan on making your sweater with and your knitting needles, and I will show you how to work your gauge swatch and then how to wash and block it. That way you're prepared day one of the make-along to get started on your sweater. Okay, with the gauge swatch, I'm going to use it as an opportunity to get you started with learning the long tail cast on and how to knit garter stitch. Especially important for those of you who are beginners and might not be familiar with that terminology. So here's what we're going to do. When you do the long tail cast on, it's important that you have a tail that is long enough for the number of stitches you will be casting on. For our little swatch here, we are going to cast on 25 stitches. So we want to put a slip knot directly onto our needle, and we want to make sure that we have enough tail to accommodate 25 stitches. Honestly, just guesstimate at this point, okay? You want to take the tail of your yarn and put that over your thumb. Take your working yarn, the one that's attached to your ball of yarn, and put that over your finger. Grab the ends, these two ends down here, grab those right down here with your fingers at the bottom. And what you will do is get yourself a slingshot. Can you see how that looks like a slingshot? All right, we're gonna take the tip of our needle now, and we're gonna hold on to that slip stitch or the slip knot that's on our needle. Go down to the palm of our hand, so right beneath our thumb, and scoop up our thumb. Swivel around to the tip of our finger and go down your finger. Now you have this little window right here that's created by your thumb going through that yarn. We're going to take our needle and swivel right through that window. Can you see how I just went right through that window? Now I let the yarn fall off my thumb. I pull the legs of my yarn and it pulls that snug on my needle. Let's do this again. Over the thumb, over the finger, grasp the legs. I have my stitches here all good to go. Go to the bottom of my thumb right here by the palm of my hand. Scoop up my thumb. Swivel to the tip of my finger. Go down my finger. That creates this window right here. We swivel through the window and then let it fall off your thumb and pull. Up your thumb, down your finger, through the window, off your thumb. Up your thumb, down your finger, through the window, off the thumb. You keep adjusting yourself as you get these on here. You keep getting back to where the slingshot. You go up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. Up the thumb, down the finger, through the window, off the thumb. If this is a little too tricky for you, there is a way to do it where you use both hands at the same time and it resembles knitting. So I want to show you how to do that as well. Okay, so I have my tail right here. I'm going to grab my tail, literally grab my tail. And I have my thumb right here, right? I'm going to go over top of my tail, scoop underneath it, and then swivel up. Okay, see how that looks just like it did, how I had it before? All right. Take my needle at this point. I'm not doing anything with that over there. I'm just letting that hang out. Take my needle, go to the base of my thumb, and scoop up my thumb, okay? Imagine my thumb is a knitting needle. I'm going into my stitch on my knitting needle. If I'm doing that, I now take my working yarn, which is attached to my ball of yarn, and I wrap my yarn around my knitting needle, just like I would if I was knitting. Hang on to this to give it some tension. Grasp my right hand needle. And now, since my yarn is wrapped around my needle, I want to come out my stitch, right? Just like I would if I was knitting. So I come out my stitch, take my needle off of my stitch, right? Let it fall off and just give it a little tug. So grasp my yarn, scoop it up with my thumb, go into the stitch, right? My thumb is my knitting needle. I go into my stitch, wrap my yarn around my needle, come out my stitch and off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Notice I'm holding, when I grab this, I'm keeping that tension the whole time. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Scoop, in, around, out, off. Okay, so those are two different ways to do the long tail cast on. Go ahead and practice the long tail cast on if you've never done it before. Practice it a couple times so you can get used to it. And then I want you to cast on a total of 25 stitches. Once you get those 25 stitches all cast on, you will grab the other end of your needle. And yes, it's gonna be a really long cord. Remember, this needle is the one we're using for our sweater. And that's a really good note for me to mention. You wanna make sure you are doing your gauge swatch with the same yarn and the same needles you plan on using for your sweater, okay? Don't use different needles, don't use a different yarn. You have to use the same yarn and the same needles that you're doing your sweater with, okay? So you grab your other end of your needle, you position the needle that has all your stitches on it, position that in your left hand. Have your other end of the needle in your right hand. This cord is just going to hang out down there. Even though it's connected, we're going to treat this as if it's just a plain back and forth, and this is how we will be doing our sweater as well. Make sure you have tucked your tail out of the way so it's not in the way at all. And we're simply going to knit. And when you knit every single row, it's called garter stitch. And when you purl every single row, it's called garter stitch. So we are choosing to do knits in the garter stitch, okay? So we will go into our stitch here, yarn over our needle, come out the stitch, and let it come off. In, around, out, off. Does that sound familiar? In, around, out, off. It's exactly what I just said for the long tail cast on. Let me show you with the yarn in my right hand. As you're working these, you gently push them up so they're up to the tip of your needle here. You go in, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. In, around, out, off. Now, one thing I want to make sure you're aware of, when you are doing this, do not pull your working yarn. Don't pull it up like this. What that does is it pulls the stitch underneath and it makes the stitch that's on your needle super tight. So you do not want to pull your yarn up. If you're going to tug your yarn, tug it back like I'm tugging down. I'm not tugging up here, I'm tugging down. So if you're going to tug, tug down, but do not overly tighten your stitches. You want to make sure that your stitches are nice and consistent. And consistency is the name of the game, you guys. As you're making your whole sweater, you have to keep all of your garter stitch extremely consistent. So you want to make sure that all of your stitches are the same size as the needle you are using. So make sure you are moving your stitches each time down to the barrel of the needle, so that way they're getting the correct size. They're not being made and held right up here at the tip where it's tapered. And make sure as you are pulling that yarn through, that stitch that's created, it should be the same size as your knitting needle. That's how knitting needles work, you guys. That's why there are different size knitting needles. You want the stitch you're creating to be the same size as your needle. Your needle is the guide for you. So if you are doing that correctly, you can then increase or decrease your needle size depending on how you knit, according to what you need in order to get the gauge for this project, which, by the way, the garter stitch gauge for this project is 14 stitches and 26 rows. Okay, 14 stitches and 26 rows. And I do want to, I almost messed up there. I didn't get the stitch all the way through. I do want to mention that as you do garter stitch, it really takes 2 rows to get the ridge of your garter stitch. So it will seem like it is taking forever sometimes because it doesn't seem it's growing. but it's really because it takes 2 rows to get 1 ridge. Now you notice I got to the end of the row and I just changed my needles just like I would if they were straight needles. I put the needle that had all the stitches on it over into my left side here, and I'm getting ready to knit onto my spare needle now, and I continue on. I've turned my work and I am looking at purl bumps. That's exactly right, because I just knit the whole last row. So of course, when I turn it, I'm gonna look at the back side of the knits, which are purls. And that is perfect. That's exactly what I want. I want to just knit, knit, knit. So we're going to continue knitting just like this until your piece, your little gauge swatch here, measures about 4 inches, y'all. 4 inches, that's right. So sit back, relax, hit pause in this video, and finish your gauge swatch, all right? We're gonna do this together. I'm gonna sit here and knit mine as well. I'll see you back here when it's all done. Welcome back. Did you get your 4 inches? I have just about 4 inches, I think. I think it is 4 inches. Yeah, I have a little bit more than 4 inches, and I'm all right with that. So now I want to bind this off. Don't worry, you will have plenty of yarn to complete your project, even with several gauge swatches if you end up needing to do that. So we want to bind this off so we can wash and block it. We will bind off in the same manner that we will bind off our actual sweater, okay? So we want to make sure that we do not bind off too snug. So go ahead, knit 2 stitches, have the back stitch jump up and over the front, but once again, do not pull that yarn, okay? We want to make sure that that stitch remains the size it's supposed to be, up and over. So it's just a normal bind off, but we want to make sure it is not too tight. And what happens, a lot of people will give an extra tug on the working yarn as they're binding off, and it makes the bind off too tight. So we definitely do not want to do that, okay? Make sure that the yarn itself, as it becomes the stitch, it's the same size as your knitting needle. Every time you knit a stitch, and have the back jump the front, and do not give an extra tug, okay? An extra tug on your working yarn tightens that stitch, and that's when you get a super tight bind off. We do not want that. So we're just going to bind off all of these stitches. When you get to the very end and you bind off that last stitch, go ahead and cut your yarn. Leave yourself a nice little tail so that way you can weave that in. Yes, you want to weave in your tails on your swatches also. And I know that I could just pull this string out so it comes all the way out, but I am going to go ahead and just pull the string through the last loop on my hook, or on my the last loop that I had, and just give it a tug. All right, so here I have a swatch, and my swatch on its own with 25 stitches and I don't know how many rows yet measures just about 6.5 inches wide. And then what did I say? Just 4 1/4 tall, okay? So right off the needles, my swatch looks like it isn't working, right? It looks like I have too many stitches in a 4-inch period or a 4-inch area than what I need for my actual sweater. Here's the thing. When I wash and block though, I know that my stitches are going to gently stretch a little bit because that's the nature of the yarn I'm using, and I will get a perfect 14 stitches for 4 inches. So the next step I want to do is wash and block my swatch in the same manner I plan on washing and blocking my sweater. So let's go ahead and head to the bathroom. And welcome to my bathroom. I'm going to do a voiceover for this part of the video. I will first start off by filling up my basin with lukewarm water and putting in a little bit of wool wash. I want to use the same washing agent I plan on using for my sweater so that I can see how the swatch will work up. Now, I apologize, my phone decided to tilt and get out of position, but you're going to take your swatch and just place it right on top of the water. You want to let the swatch naturally go down to the bottom of the basin. Don't wring it, don't squish it, don't do anything. Let it rest in the water, absorb all the water, and you're gonna let it rest for about 20-30 minutes or so. Once it's done, you'll come back and drain the sink. And when you go to scoop up your swatch or your sweater, you want to make sure that you are scooping everything up at the same time, that there is no part of the sweater or the swatch that droops out the side of your hands, okay? Because that will add extra stretch to the fabric. Then squish the fabric to get some water out. However, this is a rinse-free wool wash, but I like to rinse it, so that's what I'm doing here. And you notice literally just like pressing the fabric. I'm squeezing it. I'm not wringing it or doing anything like that. Then I place it on a dry towel, and once I've done that, I will roll it up like a burrito, nice and snug. That way I can try and get any extra water out. I like to squish that little burrito back and forth. You can see I'm just doing it very easily with my hands. I've been known to even stand on it before if it's like a large project. And then I go and block it. Now I'm at the blocking table, and I will go ahead and unroll my towel and gently remove my swatch. If this was my sweater, I would gently remove it. Once again, you want to make sure you don't let any bit of it like overstretch. So really kind of hold it all as best you can in the palm of your hand. Then I use these foam blocking boards. I got mine on Amazon. It's really wonderful. The link is in the actual pattern. You're going to take your swatch and you're going to gently shape it on the blocking board. You do not want to overstretch your swatch at this point. If you are overstretching it, your fabric is going to be way out of shape. I mean, look at that. You do not want to do that. You don't want to be like, how big can I make this get? How wide can I make this get? No, we don't want to do that. So ultimately, we want to pin this out to the correct gauge and see if we like the fabric we are getting. Now, I know for the 25 stitches, I should have my gauge swatch measure about 7 and a bit as far as how wide it should be. And each one of these squares are an inch wide. So I'm going to go ahead and use these really fantastic blocking combs. They're awesome. They're on Amazon also. And I'm going to pin this swatch 7 inches and a little bit more. Okay, so I stretch it out just enough to get to the correct gauge. Make sure you pin it on the stitches side, not the row, Marly, geez. And then once that's done, be like, all right, that's good. Now, once we've done it with the stitches, we need to know how many rows from the bottom to the top. And remember, the gartage takes 2 rows to complete 1 ridge. So we will count this, each ridge, to make sure that we get 26 ridges within 4 inches. Okay, so that is 4 inches. So we're going to count all the way up. I'm counting, and I'll get up to 26, and I will maneuver my swatch so that way I have the 26th row inside of that 4 inches. And then I will take a comb and pin it in place. Once I've done that, I then go through and I put the combs all around my swatch so that way it doesn't get any bigger or any smaller, and I'm gonna let it sit. I want to let it dry. It's best to have it dry with a fan in front of it. Do not put it in a window in like sunlight. You could actually discolor your yarn. So you want to make sure you're just letting it dry naturally. Yeah. Once it's dry, you will unpin it and let it relax and take a look and make sure that the gauge still matches what you want. You like the fabric, then you're all set to begin working on your Shoop Knit Cardigan. Aren't you glad you did a gauge swatch? I know you are.